Have you ever wanted to go back into ancient times to see if you could rule the world, to see if you could sail the seven seas, to invent currency or democracy or invent the wheel? Well, you can do that in 2 hours or less with Antica and this week's Board Games with Scott. Welcome to Board Games with Scott. This is a show where each week I take a game and explain it and briefly review it in order to help you decide if it's a game you might want to buy. This week, I'm talking about Antica, which is a German game that came out in 2005, produced by Eggert Spiel. It was designed by Mac Gertz and is an empire building game where you start out with very little, you build up an empire, you go out and destroy each other, and through accomplishing victory points, you have a winner in just a few hours. One of the things I like about this game as compared to other games like it is that you don't have to destroy everyone else to win. Instead, it's a victory point system. You get some points for destroying other people, but it's not like games like Risk and things like that where you have to kill everyone off the map in order to have a victory. And I like that feature. It's for 2 to 6 players. As I said, it takes an hour and a half to 2 hours to play. It moves along fairly quickly and has some really interesting little mechanisms. It is a German game. You can get it from some of the American importers, or you can get it straight from Germany. You can get a set of English rules to help you understand what's going on. And there are guides in the game as well in English so that you can play the game even if you don't speak German. Why don't we open up the box and see what you get? Here's the stuff that you get with the game. You get a fairly hefty game board, and one of the nice things about this game board is that it's two-sided and there's a different world on each side. This side you have focused around the Orient, and this side you have focused around Europe. And this one has Syracuse right in the middle. That's where I live right now. Anyway, you get some nice cardboard money in different currencies. There's yellow for gold, there's blue for iron, there's white for marble, and then there's kind of a grayish wild card. Each player gets a set of wooden bits. You've got little dolls, little meeples, which look like they escaped from another game. You've got little boats, which also look like they sailed away from a different game. You have columns to mark an area on the board and little discs to represent your city. And each player gets a different colored set of the same wooden bits. You've got cards which tell you where you start on the board. That's really the only purpose they serve, but it's very useful. It's very well planned out. There's a different set based upon which side of the world you're playing on. And so what you do is at the bottom of these cards, they will actually tell you for the number of players that you have where you have your first 3 cities. There are cardboard reference cards, 4 of them, which means you have to share if you have 6 players. They have English on one side, German on the other. Very convenient. And then you've got the victory point cards. I'll talk about these a little bit later. You'll use these to track what victory point conditions that you've got in the game. All in all, I find the components to be very functional. I've had no problems dealing with things on the game. The board is well marked. As you can see, the board's got blue lines and red lines. The blue lines tell you when there are 2 sea spaces that share a border, and the red lines tell you where there are 2 land spaces that share a border. That's very well done. It makes it very clear and easy to explain, and that's one of the things I like about the game, is the rules are straightforward, easy to explain. The rule book is reasonable. I was able to get into it and read the book and play it without having to consult a FAQ online or things like that. I was able to get right into it. So I'm happy with the production. I think it's well done. This is the rondelle, and this is at the core of the game. It's what makes the game interesting, and it also controls the flow of the game. And I'm also going to use the rondelle to explain the different things you can do during the game. On your turn, what you do is you move your piece around the rondelle up to 3 spaces for free, and that tells you what you can do. So if you're here on the rondelle, I may choose to do arming, marble, or know-how as my next move for free. I can move further than that if I wish, but I have to pay every space I want to move beyond those 3 free spaces. So if I were here on maneuver and I wanted to build a temple, I would get 3 for free, and then an extra 1, 2, 3. I'd have to pay 3 additional whatevers. It could be a combination of marble and gold and iron and wild cards. It doesn't matter what the currency is. I have to pay 3 additional ones to move that much further on the rondelle. So decisions go pretty quickly. You're going to look and see what your choices are. Now, most of the spaces on the rondelle don't take a lot of time to process. If you want to get marble, you go to the marble space, and then you're going to get 1 marble everywhere you have a city on a marble producing area on the board. If you want to get gold, you go to a gold space, and you'll get 1 gold. If you want to go to get iron, you go to the iron space. And again, you'll get 1 iron for every city you have on an iron producing space on the board. If you have a temple on a space, it makes your city more productive, and you'll get 3 of those goods instead of 1. So if you have a temple in an area with marble and you move to marble, you'll get 3 marble instead of just 1. Now, across from the production areas are how you use the things. You produce iron here, and then when you land here, you can do arming, where for every 1 iron, you can purchase 1 boat or 1 troop. It's very straightforward. The number of new people that you can bring onto the board is limited by the number of cities that you have. When you do arming, you can bring in 1 person at each city space. If you have a temple somewhere, then just like everything else, it triples the capacity, so you can bring in 3 people where you have a temple. With temple and marble, they're also connected. Once you get 5 marble, you can then produce 1 temple, and you can produce as many temples as you want. You'll use gold for the know-how or the invention space, and I'll explain that a bit later on. And so that's the place where you use gold. And then the other 2 spaces on the board are maneuver. They do the same thing, and with maneuver, you get to move every piece on the board 1 space. So you move to maneuver, you can move. So it moves very quickly. Many turns don't take a lot of time, because all you're going to do on your turn is I'll move to gold, collect my gold. Next player goes, I'll move to temple. I'll build a temple. The next player goes, I'll go to maneuver. And the maneuver is where the game slows down a bit, because you move everything on the board 1 space. So this is the rondelle. Some people get frustrated by this because you're taking tiny little steps each turn. You're not doing a whole lot except during a maneuver each turn. You're just doing a little bit. I like that. It keeps the game moving quickly. You don't have to plan out these long involved turns. You just take a small step. If you want to get gold again, you could do so. You move 3 for free, and then you pay 5, and you can collect gold again if that's what you really need to do. So this is the rondelle. It's very clever. It keeps the game moving at a fast pace. This is the point of the game. You want to acquire these cards. Each card is the equivalent of 1 victory point. Once 1 player has gotten a card, no one else can get that card, and there are a limited number of each type of cards. The 5 things you're trying to do in the game, in order to get your victory points, are build cities. Every 5 cities you gets you a card. And the idea of the card is it's an attracting an important leader to come to your empire. So if you build 5 cities, you get a card. If you build 7 seas, you have ships in 7 sea spaces, you get 1 of these cards. If you invent something, you get 1 of these cards. Every time you build 3 temples, you get 1 of those cards. And every time you destroy a temple from another player, you get a destroying temple card. Now, there's a number in the top of each card, and that tells you stack these up so the highest is on top and it goes down to the lowest. So you can tell at a glance how many cards there are of that type in the game. What's going to happen in the game is that people are going to build up their cities, they're going to go out and explore the seas, they're going to do the inventions and the temples fairly quickly, and these cards will go away. And then that's going to leave you, if you wait around, having to go for points by destroying other people's temples. Combat is expensive, and that can be challenging. So it depends upon the number of players you have, how many of these cards you need to win the game. With 6 players, you only need 7 of these cards to win the game, 7 victory points. With 3 players, you need 12 of them. So you have the same number of cards in the game each time, but the number that you need to get to win is different. This is the invention track in the game. This is what you're going to spend gold on, and this is going to give your empire greater abilities. Now, the way the invention track works is to move on the first level of the track on any of the 4 areas. The first person to go there has to pay 7 gold. Anyone else that then goes along only pays 3 gold. But the first person to go there gets a victory point card. So this is one of the places where you can get 8 victory point cards. Now, I will say this is also the place where victory point cards go away very quickly, because these are some of the easiest ones to get. And if you let one player get a lot of these victory point cards, they're probably going to win the game. So there's a piece of strategy for you. Make sure you try and get 1 or 2 of the victory point cards off of inventions to prevent any one player from running away with it. So the way that it works is, let's say the yellow player invents the wheel. puts his marker there and pays 7 gold for that, and then the blue player says, hey, round stuff is good. The blue player only pays 3, but also gets the effects of the wheel. Now to go down to the second level, it's more powerful. The first player to move down costs 10. Anyone else, it costs 5. So the blue player could then pay 10 on a future turn and move down and to get that special ability and get the victory point card. You can actually, when you go to know-how on the rondelle, you can invent as much stuff as you can afford. So if you happen to have 13 gold sitting here, and this were the situation, you could pay 3 gold to invent the wheel at the first level, and then pay the 10 gold to be the inventor of roads, and get the victory point card for roads. And that's something you can do. Collect up a lot of gold and go down a lot of the tracks. Now let's talk about what these tracks do. The first track allows you to move further with your army units. So normally you get to move 1 space when you maneuver. If you're here, you can move 2 spaces, and here you can move 3 spaces. With the boats, the second track is for your boats. Again, boats normally move 1 space. With this, your boats can move 2 spaces, and with this, your boats can move 3 spaces. The next column, market and currency, allow you to get more when you produce. So normally when you produce iron or gold or marble, you get 1 good for every city that you have on that type of space. This allows you to get more goods every time you produce, an extra good. This allows you to get an extra 2 goods in total. So you don't get an extra good for every space, but you get 1 extra good in total. So if you have 3 marble spaces and you produce marble, normally you'd get 3. The market, you'd get 4. With currency, you'd get 5. The final column is for defense. This makes it tougher for people to take down your cities. This adds 1 to your defense level. This adds 2 to your defense level. In some games, I see all the players have invented everything. And in other games, there aren't many inventions at all. One thing you should know, if you manage to get a person on the bottom track of all 4 of these, i.e. you invent everything that's available to you, then you actually get to use any type of currency for any other type of currency. It basically makes every coin you have a wild card. So you can use gold, iron, marble, and wild cards interchangeably. Again, that's if you get to the bottom row on all 4 of these tracks. And that can be a worthwhile investment. Let's now talk about how maneuver works. Maneuvering is the most complex part in the game. So this is a game that's set up. And you can see here, I'll explain some of the situation. Down here, yellow has a city that's producing gold and has a temple there. And normally you keep the discs on top of the thing that shows you what the city produces. You can always tell what it produces because in the background here, the color yellow means it's a gold city. Just like here, you've got the color blue, meaning that's an iron city. The yellow player has 1 boat there. Next door, there's another yellow city with 1 boat. Up here in the middle of it all, in Petra, there's a yellow city with 2 guys, 2 armies. Up above is the green player, who has a temple and a city and 3 guys. Over here on the side, you've got this red little island, this blue island nation, which has 2 boats and a city there. Alexandria has 2 guys, 2 armies and a boat, or 3 armies and a boat. And then here we've got a city with 1 guy and 1 boat. Now normally when you pick the maneuver action, you can only move people 1 space. If you have upgraded that because you've invented the wheel, or you've invented sailing, or invented something like that, you can actually go further. One thing that's interesting about this game, unlike many games of its kind, is that you can co-occupy a space, as long as neither one of you wants to fight. So let's say that green chose maneuver, and green said, well, I want to move here. Is that okay? The yellow player then will decide. Does the yellow player want to fight, or does the yellow player want to just leave him there? Now the green player could say, we're fighting. That's green's option. But if the green player says, you know, I want to stay, the yellow player can say, well, that's okay. And this can lead to some deal making. The green player may say, hey, yellow, I'll tell you what. I won't attack you if you let me move through your lands and take out blue. And so they may make an alliance. And that's part of this game. Making alliances is important. It's kind of like diplomacy in that respect. But what happens if either player says, no, we're going to fight? Then fighting is very simple. You kill off equal numbers. Yellow kills a green. They're both dead. That's the combat. Hooray! None of the silly dice stuff. You just pull people off in pairs and pull off even numbers, and whatever is left survives. So combat is fairly bloody, but it's also fairly simple. There's no luck involved. Now, in order to take over someone's city, Like here, we have this undefended yellow city. The green player could move in here. And here's one little trick. In order to take a city, you need to consider a city as a separate space on the board. It's going to take 2 movements to take a city. One to move into the country, and a second to attack the city. So this is a case where if you do not have the wheel, you will have to take 2 maneuver actions to take the city. The first maneuver action just lets you move into the space. The second maneuver action lets you attack the city. So let's say the green player did have the wheel and had 2 moves. So the first move is into Tyros, and the second move is to kill the city. And it's very simple. Again, 1 city kills 1 guy. They both die. And the green player gets to bring in a city of their own. Now, that's an interesting thing to note because it's actually cheaper to take out someone's city through combat than it is through building it up. Because a guy only costs 1 iron, but a city costs 1 of each type of good. So if you can get a guy there, it's actually cheaper just to build a guy and have him take out the city. And that's where the defense comes into play. Remember, we talked about one of the things you can invent is higher defense. If you have that +1 defense, that means an extra guy dies when you tackle the city. So if that yellow player did have the +1 defense, then it would take 2 green guys to kill him. If he had the +2 defense, then it would take all 3 of these guys to go and take out that city. And so defense is an important thing. It makes combat much more expensive. The temples, earlier I mentioned how the temples give you an extra 2 goods. So if you have, for example, if you produced a gold, this space without a temple would produce 1 gold, but with a temple produces 3 gold. The temple also raises the base defense to 3. So if yellow player had a temple in this space, then another player would need 3 units to kill it. If the yellow player had the +2 defense and a temple, then you would need 5 units to take that over. So it's tough to take out a space with a temple. However, it is worth a victory point. Every time you destroy an opponent's temple, you get a victory point. And that ends up being, in the games I've played, the final thing people are going for. They're going for that last victory point, and they have to kill someone's temple. Now you raise that defense by having troops in the space. Let's say the yellow player again had no extra advances but had this situation. So in order to take over this space, it was going to require 2 guys because that city has a bonus defense from the person who is there. Normally, boats and troops do not fight. Let's say this were the situation. We had the boat in here and a green troop in here. Those 2 troops, those 2 units could not fight. The green army and the blue boat can't fight. They can't choose to kill each other. They coexist. The only time that changes is when there is a battle within a city. And the idea here is the cities, in any space which has coast, the cities form a central space where all the boats and all the people come together. So what that means is if this yellow boat were in this harbor, then that city now has a defense of 2.
More.
So it's a +1 plus another 2. So it's going to take 3 guys to kill that city. It's going to take 3 people because the defense of the city is 1, 2, 3. If there were a temple, then it would take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people to take it out. If the person had levels of defense, it would take even more to take them out. And notice, you send all those troops down, and then that leaves this poor little green unexposed city up there for someone else to come stomping in. And that's what happens sometimes in this game. You get these floods of one person attacking another. So that's how maneuver works. Every person on the board gets to move 1. If you have wheel, the armies can move 2 or 3 based upon how many levels you have. If you have sailing or navigation, the boats can move further. The defense makes it harder to take out a city. At the end of your turn, any space where you have moved someone that does not yet have a city, you can spend 1 of each type of good to put a city there. So during the maneuver, you can take the maneuver action, spread out, and then spend your goods to get more cities. Anytime at the end of your turn you've taken 5 cities, then you get that victory point. And sometimes it can be worth it to expose yourself to rush in and take what cities you can in order to get those victory points. So that's maneuver. It's the most complex part of the game. But they've tried to make it streamlined. Again, you can see the red lines tell you where people can move. The blue lines tell you where boats can move. And people can coexist as long as neither one wants to fight. If either one wants to fight, then they both die. This is the flow of each turn. The first thing you do is you get a coin, which is the wild card currency, can be used as anything else. The second thing you do is you move on the rondelle, which determines what you can do. I showed you the rondelle already. The third thing you can do is wherever you have a person, you can build a city, as long as no one else has a city there. It costs you one of each type of resource, one marble, one iron, one gold, and you can build a city. You can build as many cities as you can afford. The final thing is that you gain historic persons, i.e. victory points, for anything you've accomplished. Once you have gotten a victory point, you do not lose it in this game. So if there's one victory point that you get when you have 5 cities, if you get up to 10 cities, you get a second victory point card. And then if someone beats you down and you're back down to 6 cities, you don't lose that point card. Once you get the card, it's yours for the game. So one of the basic strategies in this game is you always want to take advantage of situations that will let you get another victory point card, because once you have it, no one else can take it away from you. So the general flow of the game is everyone starts in their corner of the board and builds up, and then gets some temples going, gets more production going, does inventions, and then finally someone gets daring and rushes out and does some fighting. It can be a hard game to try and play military strategy from the beginning because combat is fairly expensive. I've tried it and it's difficult to do. So you're trying to get victory points on the track. Once you get a victory point, it can't be taken away. The number of laurels tell you how many victory points you need. Now if you're observant, you might say, well, Scott, the track ends at 3 and you said you could play this with 2 players. What you actually do with 2 players is you each take 2 empires. So you play it like a 4-player game, and the first player to get any of their empires to 9 points wins the game. So it's not a great solution for 2 players, but would work. So that's Antica. What do I think about it? I enjoy this game, but I know a lot of people don't, and I'll explain why. I like it because I like the empire building game concept, but I don't like how long it can take in these games. You can take forever building things up, and then the game doesn't end until you crush everyone else into the ground, and it can drone on and on. And this game gets in, gets over, in 2 hours or less. You've had this feeling of building something up and duking it out, and then it's over and you can play something else. Other people don't like it for the same reason, in that, it feels fairly thin, that there is only about 2 hours of gameplay here, and if the game drags on beyond that, it does drag quite a bit. One of the problems I have with the game is that combat is expensive. People tend to not go and fight because it's very costly to do so, and many times you have a situation where the first player goes and attacks the second player, and the third player can now come attack the first player. So no one wants to be that first player. So you can have a situation set up where everyone's just building and building and building, and no one's running out and attacking. And then it really just becomes a game of logistics, of managing your little world better than anyone else manages their little world. And finally at the end, someone decides they need to get a point out of destroying someone else's temple, and they make a bum rush for it, and whoever does that wins the game. With all of that said, I enjoy the game. I'm going to give this game a B+. I would give it a higher ranking if the combat was not quite as expensive, and that would encourage more player interaction. I find a lot of games, if you don't get in and stir things up, everyone just kind of sits there. But I really like the feel of it, and when I want to do this kind of empire building game, there's another game out there, Winky, V-I-N-C-I, which does a similar thing. I'll talk about that on another episode of Board Games with Scott. I think this one is cleaner, it's easier to explain and get into, and I've had a lot of fun with it actually. And so I was very glad to add it to my collection. With that, I will thank you for coming by to Board Games with Scott, and invite you to visit my site at boardgameswithscott.com, where you can find links where you can buy this game, as well as places to talk about this game. So with that, I'll thank you for coming, and I hope to see you on another episode of Board Games with Scott. Farewell, and don't destroy the world too much, because we're going to need it around tomorrow. Bye-bye!